time, okay? Thank you. Welcome. It's great to see all of you here tonight. I really appreciate that, and I hope you find this a great learning experience, but also a really great interaction. That's what the last two public hearings have been. My goal here in going through this, there are several, but one of them is to make sure I fully explain the aspects of the tuition agreement that have been presented to the school board as well. We'll get your questions on that. Please interrupt me at any time, and any questions or comments as we go. It'll be kind of a freewheeling navigation through all of the issues. I'm not going to use a slide presentation. What I have is this handout here, so if you don't have one, then grab one. The other things that I'm looking for is we'll get into, I'm sure, some discussions about pros and cons of the tuition agreement, and also other options that are before us of construction and whatnot, because there are, one way or another, there are issues in our future, even if we do accept a tuition agreement. So let me begin, if you will, please, because I want to make sure it's fully understood. On the first page at the bottom is the timeline that we're following. On October 2nd, the Oyster River School Board did take formal action. They voted a framework for a tuition agreement. They voted to offer it to Newmarket and Deerfield and Barrington, and shortly thereafter, I believe, Deerfield dropped out. Deerfield had already negotiated a lengthy agreement with Concord. They renewed their agreement. They were already going to school there. So I left Barrington and us, evening. There's a handout there if you like one. And a few days later, I think it was October 7th, the superintendent sent me a copy of what his board had agreed and sent a letter confirming what he told us before, and that is that we would have until November 1st to make a couple decisions. One is, will we agree that if offered a tuition agreement from Oyster River, that we will place it on the March 2014 warrant for voters to act on? And then the second is, are we interested in continuing to negotiate this tuition agreement? If you notice, they called it a framework. So Barrington and us start at the exact same place. They got the same materials, but between here and the decision time for Oyster River, we are free to do negotiations, whatever we might want to adjust in this agreement, and similarly for Barrington, whatever they may want. And these are independent negotiations, so we don't necessarily end up negotiating the same deal in the end. So we have till November 1st to notify them of those two questions. Are we putting it on the March ballot? Are we interested in negotiating? And so I've put it on the agenda for this Thursday night. We have a regular school board meeting on the 17th. And I've already prepped the school board as of the last meeting, saying this is the kind of decision we have to make. Technically, we don't have to make it on the 17th. We have until November 1st. We actually have two budget work sessions. One's the 24th, one's the 31st, and I suppose we could delay if there were an interest in doing that, but so long as we're done by the 1st. In anticipation that we would be wanting to negotiate terms further, I've already set up a meeting. Still haven't got a confirmation, but I really expect it's next Tuesday. Yes, 22nd. Next Tuesday we'll be meeting with Oyster River. That's my hope. Oyster River has two board meetings. They meet the Wednesday before ours, so first and third Wednesday. So November 6th is the first meeting when they intend to take up the issue of which district, Barrington or Newmarket, do we wish to make a final offer to. And for a while there, that was going to be the final decision point, but in the last several weeks, they decided they may very well need to go to November 20th. So right now, I'll be surprised if we hear something on November 6th. I'm really expecting a decision on November 20th. And so we have up until the 6th to try and negotiate a better deal for ourselves. And as a board, we'll talk about that on Thursday night. So that's their intention. Make a decision before Thanksgiving, and then have from then until March for Oyster River and whichever district it chooses to communicate that and try and win public support for it. On page 2, the first slide says what is new in this framework, and you see there's only 4 bullets. Back in August, mid-August was the first time that I presented to the community, and they did in the Oyster River District, this draft tuition agreement. And so we went in great detail to explain all the different elements of it. Since that time, it's almost all stayed the same. The only things that have changed are contained in these four bullets here. The tuition rate dropped significantly. You may recall back in mid-August, at least it was certainly my view, this was way too expensive. And so shortly thereafter, we had communications that said, okay, we need to negotiate this thing down. And we came down, it ends up at the $14,500 per student for the first year of the agreement, which would be 2015, 2016. And the second bullet is important too. It says that the rate will increase, emphasize rate, will increase annually by the actual increase in the appropriated, emphasize appropriated, operating cost of Oyster River High School based on the prior fiscal year. The previous agreement didn't have language exactly like that. It really was the rate on the total operating cost, and then when you divided by the total enrollment, it just made a very volatile tuition rate, and then with our increasing enrollment, we were paying through the nose for that volatility. But here, it's the rate that goes up, regardless of what the total enrollment is. And so that to me is a very good thing. It just helps moderate that volatility. But nevertheless, there is volatility because it's the appropriated operating cost for the high school. So that means what monies do they raise in March of each year? So you take what they raised in one year to what they raised in the next. What percentage increase is that? And that percent increase is the increase to the rate for the following year. So it's like a 3-year scheme, if you will. The examples that I've always put out in the community have been using a number of 2% growth rate. When we worked together as 2 teams from the 2 districts, we took a look at the previous 5 years and said, what is our growth? How has the high school budget grown over those years? And for Oyster River, it was actually a little bit less than 2%. For our high school, it was 2.9%. So those are the numbers that I've held true to. But the 2% figure is not in this agreement at all. Okay? The second 2 bullets deal with special education. In the original agreement, up until this change, everything in the tuition rate was inclusive. The tuition rate was inclusive of all the special ed costs that occurred if the student was going to school at Oyster River High School. So it didn't matter what it was, whether it was speech therapy or whatever, any kind of service, any kind of supports, IEP supports that were provided. As long as that student was going there, then that was the tuition rate. And the only thing we paid extra was for the out-of-district placements, kids who weren't going to school there. So these 2 bullets add a new component to that. When we compared the impact of taking our 250 to 300 students and moving them to Oyster River, the principals took a look at the curriculum and determined how many additional teachers they would need. And then the SPED directors took a look at SPED needs to determine how many special education staff would we need, how many teachers, how many paraprofessionals. And we actually took our current high school caseload and said, what if we were moving them over today? How would we staff it? And so it was determined that we would need 4 more case managers than what they have and 11 paraprofessionals, a few of whom were 1-to-1, but not all of them. And so that was early on, and we've held on to those numbers. But in this new change, what it's saying is that's the staffing cap that we'll allow. And I think their rationale was that because now the tuition rate in their eyes, at least, is discounted considerably, that they wanted to say that discounted number reflected the 4 case managers, 11 paraprofessionals, and that if somehow Newmarket's special ed caseload generated more of those positions beyond that cap, then we would have to pay the cost of that. whether it's be salary and benefits, and I would, although it's never been stated, I certainly would assume it would be according to their contracts and their hiring and so forth, and then they just send us that bill. So those are the only things that have changed since August. Now I'm going to go through those, but those are the key pieces right now. The second slide on page 2, this is a slide that was in the Oyster River presentation, and it's conveying to the community for each of the 3 districts how much revenue could they anticipate, and you could see what it had for the 3 of us. Let me stay with that just for a second. The Barrington number of 250 students is really important. What Oyster River is looking for is a stable source of revenue that's going to allow them to continue the rich curriculum that they offer now. They've got a declining enrollment. They feel that eventually that's going to lead to having to cut the program. And so what they are hoping for is to fill the seats with somebody being tuitioned and then continue the program. But they want that to be a stable revenue stream. Barrington right now is not that to them, because Barrington has what I call school choice. I don't know what they call it in Barrington, but Barrington parents, if their school of record is Dover High School, that's their public school. If you want to send a student to school, your free public education is Dover High School. If you want to choose otherwise to go to either Co-Brown or Oyster River, parents are able to do that. They have to pay the additional tuition cost, but they're able to do that. And because it's a choice situation, it's hard to predict from year to year how many Barrington kids will choose Oyster River. So at one point, this number 250 must have been set between the superintendent and people from Barrington. And so that's what's being shown here. That would be a considerable increase for them. I think right now they're under 100. I want to say somewhere around 80 students or so. And but in any case, that's how it was presented in terms of the revenue from Barrington. The next few slides here really just kind of repeat what's been there all along in this framework. It's for grades 9 to 12 only. It's for all of our students, not some, and it begins in 2015 and 16. The initial term would be for 15 years, so it takes us out through 2030. If the agreement is continued, it gets extended by 8-year jumps. And there's a language in there for a 5-year notice of renewal or termination. So we start out with a 15-year agreement. In year 10, we make a decision. Do we want to continue with this? Oyster River makes a decision. Do we want to continue with Newmarket? And if we both say yes, well, then 8 more years gets tacked on to the 15. So now it's got, it ends up, that's a 23-year agreement in effect from the starting point. If we say no, or they say no, then we have 5 years to figure out what are we going to do. And that seemed to us to be a reasonable period of time for us to solve our high school problem. If the agreement is terminated at any time, then after the last year of that agreement, so say we do 15 years and that's all, any students who have not graduated at the end of those 15 years will allow to continue. So go out for the next 3 years until everybody graduates, so that they can stay within the school where they began. Barrington, if we were to take this, Barrington would not be a partner, and they'd be phased out in the same way. So it's not really clear when they'd start phasing out, but that's how that would work. The special ed out of district, everything special ed out of district, primarily it's tuition and transportation, is on us. And the IEP process there, as in every school, you have a team of educators within the school that manage the IEP for students. We have committed that our special ed director will be at every one of those team meetings. So it's a big responsibility for her, but it's important to us that we're there at the table every time. Doesn't mean that we're the decision maker. Ultimately, it's the Oyster River team that decides what the appropriate placement or services are for the child. So if they make a decision that this child's not being served at Oyster River High School and has to go to an out-of-district placement, then we get to pick where that student is placed, and we then own the bill as well. And again, primarily the bill is tuition and transportation. On page 4, for transportation, we're responsible for our own transportation to and from school. For us, we worked with the current provider that we have, which is First Student, and determined that we need 3 extra buses. We currently service our schools with 5 buses. We felt we needed 8 to make this happen, so that's an increased cost for us. Oyster River will pay for transporting athletic teams to and from any of our fields. One of the things that I worked out with the town, the rec department, was a memorandum of agreement. We already have one because they are recreation fields that we use for our high school sports, and we get priority use. So what we did is we adapted that because if our students are going to Oyster River High School, then that's our high school. And so we would want priority use for any of those teams here as well. So that was agreed to by the town. And so Oyster River may be coming over here for fall and spring games. And if they transport teams on a bus, then they pay for the bus. It says also the parties agreed to study the creation of a joint student transportation system. Our current contract with First Student gets over in spring of 2015, so it's a good time. So somewhere in that point, we would then have negotiations with anybody who wants to bid on our transportation, and that would include Oyster River. So it's not something we've done at this time, but we see that timing as being perfect for us. On page 5, what stays the same with other students, dual enrollment, students taking a course who they may be homeschooled, or for whatever reason they're not going full-time at the school, they can still take courses there. We do the same thing at our school, so that seemed acceptable. Foreign exchange students, that's a situation where a student will reside here in this town and can go to Oyster River for free. It's from a foreign country. And then career and technical ed, we really tried to hold on to having our students go to SST. Selfishly, we just had a terrific experience with them. But I would also say that the loss of approximately 55, 60 students from Newmarket has pretty big impact on their programs. And so it was something we were trying to hold on to, and the state said, no, you can't do that. If you go to Oyster River High School, all of the students have to go to a career and technical ed center that to which Oyster River is assigned. And so Oyster River primarily sends students to either Dover's Career Tech Center or to Somersworth. And so we've checked, is there room for all of our kids? If we had to move them today, can you take them all in their current program? And the answer is yes. I would also add that programmatically there are more options between those two schools than what our kids are afforded at SST. The last bullet there to explain that, it says, should any other costs be incurred, Newmarket will be responsible. It's hard to anticipate what they will be with one exception. When we looked at tuition rates, we pay a tuition per student to SST, and then there's an additional fee that gets added for anybody who has an IEP. That helps them pay for their additional special ed staffing requirements. At both Dover and Somersworth, they don't have such a fee. It's just a flat tuition rate, and that's all that it is. So again, the concept is if somehow one of those schools decided to add that as a fee, that's on us. On page 6, it's all about board involvement. We would have non-voting representation on the board. Newmarket citizens can go to their board meetings and speak to anything. It's a public meeting, but obviously you're welcome to come and talk about anything relative to the high school. There'd be joint board meetings twice a year, or at least twice a year. And then the last one is really important, and that is, at least to some people, that in year 5 of this agreement, we would formally have discussions about whether Newmarket would join their cooperative. Now that's, to some people that's really important because that gives you a vote at the table. And I do get that. I would tell you that it was put out there for 5 years so that we live together for a while and be sure that this is an arrangement for the future. I think Oyster River felt that if it were something we were pressing for in year 1, it would be a non-starter in their community. So 5 years seemed a good amount of time. We've got a whole freshman class that goes completely through, and then we take a look at possibly joining. Now, I hope to have some more accurate data for you in the very near future. I'm not quite there yet, but close. But joining a cooperative is a real political process as well as a costly process. Think about Oyster River. Oyster River is a cooperative amongst 3 towns, and the towns don't own those schools. The cooperative owns those schools and makes decisions for them as a cooperative. And the cooperative school board oversees their operations. That's very different from what you see like Newfields and SAU. Newfields has its own school district for its elementary. So for us to join them would mean, well, what would be difficult is that we've been looking at this as a 9-12 problem, but they have a K-12 arrangement. And by that arrangement, it defines voting and representation and division of costs and so forth. And so I can't conceive of a way in which there could be K-12 for those 3 towns, but then we jump in for 9-12. But be that as it may, so to me, likely it will mean K-12 to K-12, which would mean, again, that the cooperative owns the schools. And they oversee and make decisions about those schools. I was talking with someone about it today. One of the dilemmas that they have in Oyster River is that they have two. You will know, right? Because I know you live there. They'll have 2 elementary schools, and I don't know which is which, but one of them has a real enrollment problem, and they put portables on site, to my understanding, or they will be. I'm looking at more. And then their other school has available classrooms. And so as a cooperative, the schools belong to the cooperative. Maybe we just redistrict and send kids from instead of going to one school, they go to another schools. But you can imagine living in those towns, they look at them as their community schools. And that makes it really hard when you're dealing with that. But anyway, that's the nature of a cooperative. Let's see, where am I here? Board involvement. High standards. It was important to us that they maintain accreditation. They had some interest in looking at some other agency besides NASC, and we said that's fine. As long as they have comprehensive high standards, we're good, and that's how we worded it. Under program, it's really important to us that students leaving our 8th grade transition seamlessly into the 9th grade. So that means there needs to be coordination of program, professional development activities at the middle school level so that we're all doing the best we can for our kids. Student affairs, those students go there, they're subject to Oyster River rules. And lastly, we get copies of all of the records for those students as we need them. Contract administration, it talks about the fact that we need to vote. We need to vote on this. Oyster River needs to vote on this, and then ultimately the State Board of Education needs to vote on it. And then this dispute resolution process that's pretty standard. Then on the bottom of page 8 are 2 recommendations that I've presented to the board. These slides came out of one presentation to the board. These are the kinds of things that it doesn't have to be exactly those words, but they need to consider on the 17th. And then the remaining, on page 9 at the top, I start getting into projected costs of the tuition agreement because it's much more than just that tuition. As you heard me say, it's tuition, SPED supplemental costs, that's your out-of-district costs, and could end up being costs above that cap. Now, if we keep that language, that cap, that staffing cap. Transportation increase, we talked about the 3 buses. Middle school only budget. We have found, as we tried to craft a budget, if we had a standalone middle school, that it's more costly to have a standalone middle school than if you've got it combined. As you can, I don't think I need to go into that great deal, but if you have questions, I will tell you that. But so that, in terms of when we do an analysis of the cost of this tuition agreement, there basically are 2 factors that make it more costly. It's not a cost savings. In the beginning, it's the fact that a middle school is more costly, to the tune of a little over $1 million more to operate the standalone. And then as the years go on, as we add students, and we're paying per student, our costs go up. So in the 2017, 18, 19, if you look at those enrollment jumps that we take, and then going all the way up to 2020, 21 or 296, our enrollment is climbing. And with each student, it's that times whatever the tuition rate is. So it's not growing on an even pace. As long as our enrollment's growing, our costs are rising quickly. And I don't think, unless you see anything on here, you want me to ask questions, I'm not going to go through all of this analysis that I've got here. I'd rather that you get talking and asking me questions. And if you want, I'll be happy to answer questions on them. I'm looking at page 12, though. And here's what I explained to the group the other night. And again, we haven't talked about this as a board. But here's how I see it playing out. If in November, if Oyster River says, Newmarket, we want to partner with you, then we're obligated, if we vote to do so, to put it on the March 2014 ballot. The only other thing that I can conceive of being on there that's somewhat facility related would be the fire and life safety. We still got to raise more money for that. But not knowing how the tuition agreement vote turns out, either in Newmarket or Oyster River, we can't put these other options on. If the tuition agreement passes, and that's our future, then we've got middle school to deal with. And if it doesn't, then we've got junior, senior high school to deal with. And so my recommendation to the board is going to be that we not only have the March meeting, of course, but we also perhaps have a spring special school district meeting to deal with step 2, as I call it. What's the next step, depending upon what happens. If the tuition agreement is offered to Barrington, that's a whole other matter. But that's how I see that playing out in terms of district meetings. So. Okay, enough talking from me. What kind of questions do you have, or comments, or one of the things I'm interested in is pros and cons. What do you like about a tuition agreement? What don't you like about a tuition agreement?
What do we do with our staff that we have now?
If they would be laid off. And I don't have the slide here, but it's a good number of staff that would lose their jobs. That we have a riffing procedure, so it may not affect purely the junior, senior high school. It's conceivable that some people could bump somebody at an elementary school, so it has some potential for effect at both schools, depending on things. But that's what would happen, is they'd have to find other jobs.
So the staff at the elementary,
Go
staff
ahead.
at the elementary schools could be affected as well.
Yeah, but I don't think a whole lot. But again, there's a riffing procedure that is driven by a variety of factors, one of which is certification. You have to be certified. And so people either have, some of them have K-12 certifications, or they have 6-12 5-12 certifications. So we'd have to iron that out when we get there. But I think by and large it's at the junior, senior high school, and I think that's fair to say. The thing that it can be concerning is let's say it's voted in March of 2014, we still have to educate kids through 2014-15. And yet if I'm a teacher and my job's on the block, I'm looking, and it might be hard to, no, I won't say, yeah, it might be hard to replace knowing that it's a one-year position. So, you had a question?
Well, that kind of segues into my question. And the staff being let go, which saves money, which means the coffers are fuller than they were when we had all those teachers. And aren't there other places where the cost will be less because of paying tuition?
You're not the first person to think that way, but it's not really the case. Let me find the right slide and I will walk you through it.
No, you can just tell me, yes or no.
No. The answer is no. People think there's all that money, but that money, it just if you think about a budget, yes, you cut all that staff, but if you saw what we have to pay in tuition, roughly $3.6 million, it goes right into the tuition account. It isn't like...
Right.
Right.
But to me, it sounds like, I don't know if it's even, but at least you're not spending out all that money.
It comes close.
We haven't spent before.
It comes close to even if you just purely look at it for grade 9 through 12. Mm-hmm. That's in the beginning, okay? Mm-hmm. The problem is that it's not just a 9 through 12 issue for us, it's 6 through 12. Because the standalone middle school is more expensive by close to $1 million than it is if we work together. So a decision to agree to a tuition agreement is made more expensive because now you've got a standalone middle school.
But we'd have to do something with the middle school anyway.
I mean just operating costs. Just operating costs are more expensive.
So what would be that much more expensive for the middle school with or without the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th graders?
What kinds of things? Well, you still have to have, you got your same custodial staff and food service staff. No, you got staff that can't go away. You got a principal, you got a full-time nurse, you got a variety of positions that still remain in the school because it's a school. And
You're not
so you
considering construction costs in that.
No, so there's no construction there, and that's the step two that is a problem still. But I'm just saying, just operating cost, it's just more.
$1 million more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know. No, I mean, the heat of the building, most of the lighting. People look at that building and they see the. When you look at that building, you see from the front, you see the 1924 building to the left and to the right. Many people know that those are primarily middle school classrooms. That is not solely where the middle school operates. They go to guidance, they go to the nurse, they go to the cafeteria, they go to the library, they take foreign language in other places, they take art and music down in that 1924 building. Their library is there. So there's...
But we'd have the 5th grade there, too, using the facility.
That's been a decision. I don't think that's a bad one. I think that's a good idea. We look to do that, yes. Okay? Somebody else, yeah.
Last year, didn't the school district buy the land across the street from the high school with the intent of building a high school?
Yes.
Did they actually buy that?
We own that land.
And then, so now if we end up doing the tuition, we don't need that land. Are we going to sell it, or what's the plan on that?
I don't think there's any. I don't know what they're going to do. I wouldn't rush to judgment to unload the land. A tuition agreement is like a rental agreement, and to me that's a long-term investment that once you need to be sure, absolutely sure of your future. When we've talked about a standalone middle school, one of the options is to build a middle school over there. I'm already in the process of working with the architect to design just such a school, and we're trying to design it in a way that if the tuition agreement failed at some point, that we could add on to that building an addition that would accommodate the high school. Yeah.
We didn't buy that land just to build the high school. That's what he said, just to build the high school. We bought that land to have options,
Yes.
yes, not to, just to build a high school.
Well, at the time, it was junior, senior high school. You may remember.
No, we didn't talk, we just bought that
Yeah,
for
but,
options.
yeah, but wait a minute, Chet. Remember this, that back in 2010 is when we started exploring merger with other districts. And the end result to that was nobody wanted us except short-term, right? So when we bought the land, there was no tuition option on the horizon. It was all about building a school.
No,
Yeah,
no, because we had the options possibly as a parking lot.
oh, I agree. But I mean, improving our school, whether it's on one side of the street or the other. Yes.
Wasn't strictly for building a high school.
Not necessarily on that
That's what he
site.
said.
Right,
That's
yeah.
what
It
he
wasn't necessarily on that site. And then we had a facilities committee which took a look at, do we build on that site? Do we look at an ad reno of the existing building? And so we did look at those. But at that time, we had no hope of a tuition agreement. And it was only after that was voted in March, it was about a month or so later, that Oyster River contacted me to say, we might be willing to sit down and talk about our long-term tuition agreement. So that was about a year and a half ago.
Just
Yes.
a quickie. Doesn't the town unit have a percentage in that?
Yeah,
ownership?
it's part of the agreement.
So it's not just the school?
Well, the school owns it and can decide what to do with it. It's only if it gets sold, part of the disbursement of proceeds, there's an amount that would go back to the town coffers, if you will. Okay? Yes, right here.
The town, the school board at Durham votes yes to extend a tuition agreement to Newmarket. Does that vote then go to the citizens of Durham? And if so, do we vote at the same time as them, or do we hear the decision before we vote?
We both would, Oyster River and us would both vote in the March district meeting. Might not be the same day, but pretty close, I would imagine, because you have a very small window. What I'm not clear on, and I've sent an email to Oyster River and haven't heard back, it's again, it's not just Durham. You said Durham. There's Durham and Lee and Madbury, and it's not clear to me whether it's a collective vote for all three towns or whether the towns independently have to approve of it. So I haven't heard back on that.
Is there any way to coordinate through a vote from the school board that we set our meeting after Durham's vote? Because it seems like a waste of time for all of our citizens to come out and vote. We don't know what they're going to say. And we might be able to put something else more relevant on the ballot if
Yeah.
they say no.
We wouldn't be allowed to put anything on the ballot at that point.
point.
Yeah, so
Right.
it'd be a foregone conclusion,
Okay.
one way or the other. And we, along with the town, we've really already set the date for March. You have a very small window of time. It's going to be almost simultaneous, if not the same.
Okay.
If this is all about the money, I'm not a real good math person, but what would that mean in people's taxes either way?
Yep, let
Tuition-
me get you to the right page, all right?
Is it that big?
Look at the bottom of the bottom of page 10. Look at the bottom of page 10, okay? This chart shows the 6 through 12 expenses for us for as far out as our enrollment is projected. That's why we only go to 2020-23. And here we have the, let's see, I'll check, yeah. This here has a tuition rate growing at 2% a year. Again, that's that Oyster River 2% that I used. And then we multiply it times the enrollment. You can see that actually in the slide up above. And so that's what gives the tuition expense line. Then out of district, again, that's based on our current out of district population. And we took a look at the costs, and then we just grew that annually by 3%. And then the transportation increase, we worked with our provider to say how many buses, what would it cost us now, and we projected that out also at 3%, because that's what our current contract with them is. It's 3% increase a year.
You rolled all those expenses in and put that as one number, and you built the school and put that as
That's-
another number. What would that mean on, say if you had a house that was 200,000?
That's what I'm trying to get to. That's what I'm trying to get to.
Sorry.
Okay? Last is this middle school only budget, which I said was more expensive. Okay? So you can see the total there for a 6 through 12 in the tuition agreement world. It's about $8.4 million in that first year. All right? So if you turn to the top of the next page, the top line is that $8.4 million and everything moving forward. And then the second line in that table says stay as a junior senior high. In other words, if we continued our operation that we have today, and that says nothing about facilities, just continue to operate as we are today and grow that out at 2.9% per year, then you can see that in year one it's almost just under $7.2 million. So the difference in year one is about $1.2 million. And as the note says there, because the cost of 9-12 staying versus there is negligible difference, it's really the fact that you've got a standalone middle school that drives that 1.2 million. And as you move further out, you see it grows to 1.9 million, and that growth is primarily because you've added more students and you're paying per student. So down below shows the tax impact of that 1.2 million to 1.9 million. That's what I was getting to. And that's without doing anything for your facility. It's without fire and life safety. It's without doing renovations for middle school or building a standalone middle school. It's without any facility or capital improvements.
10 years, if they decide they just don't want you anymore, their town has grown and they don't need you, then you're back to no school, and how much is the tuition now, 10 years from now? And we're just sitting here with nothing, pretty much. It's like renting a house, and you pay all this money, and in the end, you don't own it.
It is the risk of renting. I agree with you there. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yes. I'll come over. I'll get you.
This summer, I noticed that the high school and junior high got a lot of great improvements. How many more great improvements do we need to do to make it up to code to keep it a high school?
The fire and life safety code, the latest estimate I have for finishing all the code violations is about $1.7 million. The last estimate we did, and it's still not reconciled how much this summer cost us, but it's going to be somewhere near this $640,000. And so then we'll still have some money left over in our dual purpose fund, we call it. And so about $700,000 left over. So we would have to raise and appropriate about $1 million this March to finish it off. I'm still working to refine those, but that's the best estimate I have now. Yes, ma'am.
Going back to the discussion prior to that last question, you're not taking into consideration the possibility of joining the corporate in 5 years. So, there wouldn't be a question of students who were tuitioned in coming back to nothing. That's still an option.
That's true.
And a second question I have is, and I'm fairly...
I don't know if you heard her, but again, because I want to repeat, I'm not sure words getting around here, but she said that you still have the idea of joining a cooperative. So that takes away that fear of, that renter's fear, if you will. So.
And I kind of have two related thoughts to that. But before I talk about one of them, I'm fairly new to all of this, but my understanding is that the new high school has come up for a vote twice and has been voted down. Is that correct?
2006 and 2008, I believe.
So I'm just wondering, it just would seem to me, coming in and objectively looking at this, that on both sides of the issue, it might be good to have, who comes up with these figures? Where do these figures come from?
Depends on which figures.
The ones that we were just talking about that actually impact taxes. Where do they come from?
It's a combination of through my office and also the Oyster River office.
And I would almost, just in terms of Newmarket, I would think it might behoove us to get a totally outside evaluator, somebody who was a financial analyst and who, you know, understood efficiency and you know, use of services, and, you know, just like the teachers who would have to be laid off, for example. You know, my question is, what about administrators? I mean, if we're going to consolidate, do we really need all the administration that we currently have?
There are administrators in that pool of people too.
Okay,
Yeah,
and
I
is there a
agree.
way
Yeah.
to reconfigure the old buildings so that the part that is old and is not used, wouldn't need to be used by middle school kids, could be, you know, partitioned off so that, you know, it would be a more efficient facility in those terms?
In the good part of that building, there's just not enough room to operate a school, standalone school. There are a lot, as I talked about, library and music room and art room and foreign language and sped rooms that are down in that area. So there's not enough there. I mean, when we've had 2 studies done of our facilities, engineering studies, and when they take a look at the old part of the building, which is 1924, there's another part that was built in the 1950s, the first step is to demolish those, realistically. You know, you could, if you wanted to try and renovate them, I mean, I'm sure you can do anything in this world, but it would be incredibly expensive to do that, incredibly expensive. And so their recommendation is that you're better off demolishing that.
The entire building?
No. The 1924 part and the 1956, I'll call it, part. And you got to demolish those and then rebuild somehow.
Going back to my previous thought, though, would it not behoove Newmarket to have somebody who is totally disassociated, who doesn't lean in either direction, is unbiased, look at things and evaluate it a little bit more, you know, very much more objectively, and, you know, maybe help us to use what funds we have and what funds would be coming in more efficiently,
Right.
and make this transition.
So do you think you see some bias in?
Well,
in
you know, I just think when you're in something, you know, and you talk about operating costs and that kind of thing, you're not looking at, you know, the possibilities of, you know, can we look at this and weigh, is it really essential?
Okay.
Or are there ways to you know, do things so it is more efficient?
Right.
Especially if we're talking about removing 9 through 12 students and sending them and paying tuition for them.
Right. Okay.
Isn't that
Thank
what
you.
the school board's for? I mean, they're not school board, they hopefully hope that their objectives.
Ultimately, that's who you elect, and they rely on myself and other administrators to do that analysis. I mean, we work with architects and engineers, and in terms of the new construction, we've gone out to an independent cost estimator, so we try and reach out to get that independent, unbiased view, but yes.
I can tell you from working I'm an educator, not in Newmarket, but at another school, and I've had a lot of experience because my position is grant funded. I can tell you that I have a lot of experience working with operating budgets, and there's no school in New Hampshire or probably in the United States that is operating above and has any access of money that, like, they haven't already tried to finagle ways to cut the budget. There's just no money extra in our budgets anymore.
And personally, for me, this is my 4th year, and I really feel like we've tightened the belt the last 3 years, and I've already said it to the board. I think we've tightened it as far as we can go, and so we've got to start, you know, holding the line, but then also maybe improving where we've stepped too far. So, yeah, well, we're really trying to. I mean, that was certainly our effort to try and do that. Yes, you had your hand up next. Go ahead.
Cheaper to go the multiple buildings like Phillips Exeter or a lot of the schools that have more than one building, UNH.
Yeah.
I mean, nothing real fancy, but maybe an addition across the street that would handle some of the things we want, like,
Yeah.
you know.
I'm going to talk more with the architect about that, but we did back in the days when we had a facilities committee to talk about that and dismissed that idea because it means on some level duplication of facilities on both sides of the street, and then still students traveling across that street throughout the day. So there wasn't a lot of interest in that.
UNH has the, crossover, college students. Yeah, but you're talking 52 million for a new school. You could do.
Well, there was a time when we looked at a crossover, a skywalk, whatever you call it, and we looked at underground. Underground is almost impossible because of all the utilities that are there. Skywalk is maybe desirable, but it's a maintenance headache. If you can imagine when it snows, keeping it clear, safe. So it's that's a real challenge. In the end, and we also looked at having a stoplight. We have pedestrian buttons and so forth. And when we met with the Department of Transportation, the sight lines are enough that they said you really don't need that. If you're willing to, on the peak times like school starts, school ends, if you're willing to hire a crossing guard, that's probably all you need. So that's where that study ended up. You had a question next.
Well, in some of your previous presentations, I think you're selling yourself a little short on your independent view on there, because I think you do bring an independent view to the process, offering points for us to view. But the other part is the school by itself today is half as big as it needs to be, right, for the juniors. Wasn't that sort of the figure we talked about?
Sure, I know what you mean by half as.
The new building should be twice, or a much
in terms
bigger,
of square footage?
Yeah, much bigger than it is now.
Yes, it would be, yes, right.
So like, even if you built multiple buildings, you're only going to bring it up to housing the middle school kind of process. So there's another part of this is that we have a lot of kids stuffed in a very small space.
It is, and most of those spaces in there are inadequately sized for the functions that they're serving, and so that's part of what that expansion is about. It's not like we're trying to, create an office suite for every department
for yourself.
Or anything. Yes, well, no, I don't need that. Don't start that rumor.
But so, but in theory, I don't know how many middle school students there are, but in theory, just by the virtue of moving the high school out, you've almost gotten to the square footage you need for the regular middle school. They're fairly close to that.
Yes.
Yeah. School size.
When we looked at a renovation addition on that side of the street and really tried to be prudent in decisions, it starts with that demolition, and then that led us to phasing the project. So instead of what is typically an 24-month construction project, it was something more likely a 3-year construction done in phases. And so those phases involved putting on a new addition, putting portables across the street, and the portables would probably be in place for a couple of years. And it also meant then that students would be going to school on a construction site, all the things you have to do to keep it safe for them, and try and minimize noise impact. And when we did a cost estimate, we had a design that still had issues. It didn't have a fire lane that went all the way around. But anyway, we had a design that we costed out. And in the end, the difference between all that and just build new across the street and design it appropriately, whereas it wasn't everything one should be doing in a school. It really was a small amount of money in the minds of the facilities committee. I think it was maybe $3 million. And facilities committee and then ultimately the school board that then dismissed that end renovation idea. So we have studied it a lot. Give your hand up, yeah.
If the kids do go out, and let's say they do go to Oyster River, I know you said something to the effect that it was going to, the difference was $1 million. Has the school committee discussed the fact of maybe increasing the staffing for the existing middle school or the new middle school now in Newmarket to reduce class sizes and improve education for our kids?
We took, when we did that middle school only budget, we took a look at the enrollments that are moving up. Of course, we know elementary, we've got much larger classes and they're moving our way. And yet we still didn't feel we needed to add much in terms of staff. I think the only thing that we felt we needed to add was one, and can't remember what special ed position perhaps. I can't remember, I think it was. So it really only amounted to like $84,000 to...
But wouldn't that improve education by reducing the class sizes? Let's say you have 16, or whatever the number is today in the middle school now. what is it, 16, 17, 18 kids?
Yes?
Reducing that size to a third of, maybe have 15 kids.
But wait a
or 12
minute,
kids.
maybe I misunderstand your question now, because that $1 million is $1 million more you're paying out.
I understand that, but
Okay.
I'm just saying that you have an opportunity to look at taking care of one problem with the facility. The second opportunity may be to improve the education for the kids that are left in our new elementary schools and middle schools by reducing class sizes, by adding staff. So that staff that potentially you're laying off, or administrative
Oh, I see.
staff, is
Add jobs,
preserving those, because Newmarket's got outstanding teachers, and I
Yes.
hate to see them disappear.
I know.
But the point being is that, let's have a plan in place so that we can improve what we have built upon, because as we turn around every year, teachers are retiring. I mean, great teachers, and we have nothing left to show for what they've done.
Right. We didn't feel that class size was an issue. So to answer that question as directly as I can. The thing that was a good thing, an enhancement that kind of get in the way you're talking, is to bring 5th grade up, as somebody mentioned before, and make it a 5-8 middle school. Because what has been forgotten over the last 3 years is that the middle school is looking at a space problem. I mean, we already have 2 portables. I'm sorry, elementary, excuse me, yes. And one's in deplorable condition. We're going to try and improve it because we own them. Try and do some renovations there to improve it. But we still have them out in portables, and we have functions going on in spaces that really aren't appropriate for what we're trying to do. And so back in 2010, we designed an expansion of that elementary school building. And where I'm going is that if the 5th grade were brought up to the middle school, then that relieves some enrollment pressure at the elementary school. And so the need to expand that building is really pushed off beyond the foreseeable future. So that would be a good thing. That would be a very good thing if we could create a 5-8 middle school. But in terms of keeping the staff to reduce class size, we don't see class size as an issue there. Yes?
How many students would be at the middle school if you included 5 through 8? Approximately.
I don't know that number off.
Approximately.
Well, there's like 105 in 5th grade right
Yeah.
now, right?
Yeah, you're probably talking 350 to 400, somewhere
So
in there.
more than the students who are leaving 9 through 12 at today's
Yes,
date.
that's what we're seeing. If
Today's
you
date,
saw our enrollment
right.
numbers, we've got large groups of kids now at the elementary, and they're making their way up. And that's why in this data here about high school, when you get out to 2019 and 20 and 21, those kids start to hit high school, and the enrollments just grow. Right here. Yes, you did. Yeah.
Well, I'm very concerned about budget, but I'm also trying to give a lot of thought to the kids themselves. And I'm wondering what kinds of conversations you've had about the transition and the assimilation of our kids into a really different environment. Have you talked about that, and what kinds of plans are you looking at? And how do we do that?
We, not quite a year ago, it was sometime early last spring, I think, we put together, both schools put together transition teams. So administrators and staff from Oyster River High School and Newmarket High School both brainstormed independently the kinds of questions you're talking about, as well as then met and tried to talk about those things. I think people saw opportunities that needed, and I'm not going to go into specifics because I don't really have them on the tip of my tongue, but things that we could do. Let's say the agreement is March 2014, we've got an agreement that they could begin that transition process right away. Get into some more planning of some other things, but have activities where the students come together rather than September 2015. So have things that happen all along the way is part of the approach that they're taking to that.
Have you looked at the curriculum that the kids from here would be going into what they've had in the middle school as compared to what Oyster River has their kids coming from and going into high school? Have you compared curriculums?
The curriculum comparison has been at the high school level. We've certainly looked at academic performance on standardized scores, and so they're comparable. They really are comparable. What we did is take the current course signups that students have and lay them on top of the curriculum at Oyster River High School to make sure that there were courses that mirror what kids are taking today at our school. And from that is how they determine how many new teachers that they needed, because they really, over their value, small class sizes just as we do. We took a look at what's each school doing well, because there are things that we do really well at Newmarket High School that they wish that they did do well. And so we've had conversations around how those things would work. We have talked, it gets back to the staffing thing, when of course they're going to be hiring staff over there at Oyster River High School. And so we're in agreement that although they can't automatically take our staff, but any staff who apply from our school who apply for a job over there will be guaranteed an interview. And as I've tried to articulate with them in terms of transition, it really makes good sense to hire some of our staff members, because that's a familiar face in a sea of unfamiliar ones, and so that's another thing that can help. Okay. Over here, yes, sir.
My question is more general about how other towns in this area do high school. Are there any other towns that are our size that are operating their own high school at this point?
I don't know all of their sizes, to be honest with you.
I mean, it just
I don't know how
seems
big
like
Epping is, but it's probably not a whole lot bigger than us.
look around, you've got Portsmouth has got numerous towns that feed into its high school.
Right.
Dover, Oyster River, Exeter. There aren't a lot of towns this size that are trying to operate their own high school at this point. And one of my concerns as a parent who's got a child in the elementary school is the choices that we can offer as a smaller town. When you look at these other towns, part of the reason that Durham is so concerned is that they're losing students. They're not going to be able to offer the programs that they offer today. That's part of the reason why they're coming to us. I just think that this is a great opportunity, and my feeling is to join forces, which is what it requires these days to educate someone at the high school level. You know, it's very expensive, and that's what we're just, you know, obviously this town can't get past that as far as funding a new school, how expensive it is. It just doesn't seem to be a lot of realism about that, because if you look at what it costs to build a school these days, 50 million is actually on the low end of a new school. If you look in this region, there's a lot of $100 million schools out there for high school. So I don't know how that message, I don't know, I've talked to a lot of people, and there isn't a lot of confidence that we can ever pass a school in this town. A lot of people feel like we can't get to 66%. But I have heard that we only have to get to 50% to pass a cooperative agreement. Is that accurate?
Yes.
So, I mean, I know there's a lot of people that are putting their chips on this. And I've heard some of the media coverage in the last week that was saying that people aren't sure. Well, the people I talk to with kids in the elementary school, they're kind of looking at this as one of their last best hopes for having an opportunity to have a secure high school education that right now this town doesn't seem interested in providing.
I read the article in the newspaper. I would tell you I thought it was very accurate. It was a crowd about the same size as this, and we're all over the place in terms of their opinions as to what to do. So there was a lot of uncertainty there. I would say in terms of curricular choice, yes, they do have more options for kids over there. But what I would say about ours is that we do a much better job of personalizing education for kids, and than you might necessarily see in a larger school, and so that makes it very rich for every kid. So that is a plus. The other thing, I mentioned things that we do that they don't. I think we do a terrific job with kids taking online courses, with virtual high school and VLAX. We really encourage it. We support it within the school environment. So we have a lot of kids doing that, which I think is a good thing. That's a very small part of the program over there. For whatever reason, I think they've only chosen to go with one of those providers, and even then don't have many students doing it. So kids at our school do have that variety. It's just crafted in a different way. But I don't disagree. I mean, courses in robotics, their English program is all electives. And so it's, when you have a larger school, you can create more opportunities for kids. I agree. Let me go with somebody new. Yes.
That you were referring to, I have a freshman, so I'm not really quite sure, but we have friends who are seniors, and so class ranking is going to change, correct? And maybe you can just address that.
Well, and I'll be honest, you see my hesitation there. My experience as a longtime high school principal is that when students transfer into your school, you get their transcript, you see what the courses are that they took, you try to map it to the curriculum that you have, and you map the grading systems together, and ultimately you find you get a GPA for those kids and they slip right into rank in class wherever they belong. And so to me it was very natural to expect that. That's not part of this agreement. We've never talked about it as part of the agreement. I think we all viewed that as something that principals would work out and school administrators would work out when we get to a final deal. But in one of our meetings, I was frankly surprised that the question came up. An Oyster River school board member asked his principal, well, how would you do this? And the gist of the conversation is that it wouldn't be as I just described. That maybe for a period of time, there'd be the Oyster River ranking class and the Newmarket ranking class, treating us separately. And I mean, I don't know why that is, except I can only suppose. Because again, having been a high school principal, I know very well, you got kids who they have their 4 years mapped out. They know how they're going to be number one in the class. And they watch the number 2 and the number 3 and the number 4 and the number 5. And they do. And they see what they got for grades. I mean, they're just really aggressive about it because it is a big deal. And you can imagine if you've been on that hunt for several years, and then this crackerjack kid from Newmarket comes in and bumps you back. And so I think there's some dynamic there that's the only thing that I could read into that, because I do get that as a bit of a problem, because it's not one kid moving into my high school, it's 260 kids moving into my high school. But I bristle at the thought of dual ranks in class, and hopefully we can work that out. Over here, yes. I'll get you. Yeah. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
To a couple of things that have come up. I have to concur with this gentleman here, and I come from a perspective of my kids went to big high schools, 2,500 students in a high school. You know, even 300, which you're not projected to reach here in Newmarket, seems very, very small.
Yes.
And it's kind of like buying a new house. If you build a house, you're going to pay today's prices for that house, and it's going to be a lot more expensive than if you bought an existing house that was built with materials at yesterday's or previous days' prices. So $52 million or more, and I agree, it's probably going to be more. It never stays at that estimated cost. Is a phenomenal amount of money to spend for 300 students. Whereas if we join forces, and the thing is it's a give and take. If we join Oyster River, they give to us and we give to them. What we do well, we can share with them. What they do well, they can share with us. And I took the time to look at the DOE data, and Oyster River is definitely working at a higher level, both with regular, the entire population, but also with the special ed population, the IEP students. They do a very excellent job. And it's just like when I was learning how to play tennis. If I played with someone who was better than me, I got better, and I learned more, and I learned faster. And I have to agree that by offering our students a more enriched curriculum that we would be able to afford in a larger school district is going to be good for them. And you think I can understand kids class standing and their GPAs and that kind of thing. But that's more of a short term. And I'm not saying I don't empathize with that and with the angst that students would feel if they are number 1 or number 2 or number 3 here in Newmarket. But in the total scheme of things, your high school GPA isn't even looked at. College GPA, on the other hand, because I have a son who just got into Duke University, and he had to struggle because he fooled around his first couple of years of college, but college GPA is important. But I think we can send our students off to college with AP classes and more enriched curriculum, and maybe we can help them with their online courses and do that. I just think offering our students a more diverse, richer curriculum, would be better for them. And I think you have to think about the students, not just the money. And 2 more quick things. Our kids are much more resilient. I'm a teacher. I'm a mother of 4. Kids are so resilient. It's amazing how resilient they are. The parents, they have a tougher time. And I'm a parent, I understand. It's hard to let go. It's hard not to protect them and control everything in their lives and make it all smooth for them. But kids adjust. It's amazing how quickly they adjust. And I think that I just think it would be enriching to be part of a larger school district. Secondly, the affiliation with UNH. And I've been in the schools in Oyster River, and I see the affiliation with UNH. And that is another whole dimension of enrichment for students.
I think Oyster River would like to improve on that, but I don't disagree. They have access where we don't. Yeah. I want to make one comment about what you said too, though, because I want to make sure I characterize what you have here in Newmarket versus what you might be going to. Having been a principal of high schools upwards of 1,300 kids, and I can tell you that I, like many of my colleagues, was always concerned. I wanted every kid to go through that high school and have a connection with one faculty member, because I really always worried about the kid who would go through for 4 years and fall through the cracks. And I think that's a worry about larger schools. And what happened over the years in my time as a principal, and still happens today, is schools are trying to figure out how to do schools within a school, how to chunk their 1,500 student school into houses, if you will, or a freshman academy or whatever, so that it more personalizes their experience. And they don't want kids falling through the cracks. And when I came here, this was really my first experience with a small school system. And I like dealing with much bigger organizations, but what I found to be true, people told me, but I found it on my own, is that that small school environment that those schools are trying to craft, you have it in ACES here in Newmarket. Without a doubt, you do. And when somebody asked if I talked with kids, and then the question went somewhere else, but I've talked with a lot of kids about their feelings relative to the school that they're in and tuition agreement or where they went to schools elsewhere. And the just unanimous chorus of what a terrific, respectful, fun, great learning environment, great teachers, personalized education. And that's something that isn't in every school, even schools this size. That's all. And that's just my perspective. But again, I've been... I
have to say, though, I don't think the purpose of the school determines that.
Believe me, I was proud of the high schools I was principal of. They were
And
great
again,
schools.
My son, my oldest, when he was going to the high school with 2,500 students.
I understand.
And he was scared to death, and he didn't want to go, and he begged me not to send him, but that was
Right. My
the only
son went to
alternative.
one with over 3,000.
But you know what? He did make connections. And I have a copy of a letter I sent to the principal when he graduated, and I could name his guidance counselor, number one, but then 5 teachers that made a personal connection.
I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I mean, again, because I think there were great schools out there, and I was proud of the schools that I was principal of, and I think we created a great learning environment for kids. And when I came here, it was a little bit of skepticism about people saying, oh yeah, but what? And I'm just going to tell you it's real. I don't have anything else to say, because it's just something special that is not usually replicated somewhere else. That's all. And I'm not trying to be persuasive one way or the other. I just want you to know what you have and what you're going to. And it's not to say it's a bad learning environment over there at all, and more opportunities. And I mean, I went to a 1,600 student high school. I never felt lost. I had a great time. I really learned a lot and had a great experience. So it can happen. I just, as a principal, worry that it doesn't happen for everybody. Yes. Yes, it's you.
That was sort of what I was going to try to say, but I'm not very good at speaking, so I was like, but coming from the elementary school where I had such a wonderful experience, and my son going into sixth grade, who is now in 7th, I was very concerned. But I see the principal and vice principal out there every day. They know my son. They know all of the other kids. They're very positive. You go and introduce yourself to a teacher. They know who you are. They know about your kid and how they're doing. I talked to I saw some of the kids on the he did a little thing on Channel 13 last year, and the kids were talking about how it feels like home and we're a family. And you know, I too know that if my kids go to another school, they will persevere and they will do wonderful. Because we have a great community and we try to support, I hope, our children. But I think also that what we have here is truly special, something that I don't think that they'll get anywhere else. So I will fight as hard as I can, as long as I can, and then take with it what I can into the next phase.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Well, I would love to be at a small school. I agree. Small schools are great. Small colleges are great. They also cost a lot more money. And that's the one thing I see missing meeting after meeting, is that nobody's willing to pay for operating a small school. The building we have now, with the facilities we have now, is not at the same standard of any other school around here. We're not.
You're right.
We're not treating these kids fairly. I mean, that just is unacceptable in my mind. I would pay more to have a small school and keep it here in Newmarket, but I'm in the minority. There's not enough of us here willing to operate at that kind of school. And so we have to look for what's the next best alternative, instead of 5, 10 more years of piecemeal people saying, well, you know, you can tape this together and use a paper clip and hold this building together because it doesn't matter. I went to that school 70 years ago. It's good enough for you. I don't want to subject my daughter to that. And I don't think anyone else should have to. So I feel like we're really pushing this, and we can't keep pushing it down the road. And so I feel like there's going to be a strong contingency who, although we'd love to have the small school, is going to be pushing as hard as we can to get this tuition passed, because we don't feel like we have any choices. There is no other choice for us. Keeping the status quo is not an option, right? We know
it really is. It really is. And one of the things I'm working on is some kind of a real succinct way to lay out for you what are the options, what are the costs, and what are the pros and cons. And that's one of the things that I'm listening to as you speak. What are the pros and cons that you see? Because I really want you to be an informed voter come March. So I won't have it anytime real soon, but that's my aim, is that when you come to March, you're going to know tuition agreement, pros, cons, costs, Same for building a new school, or these ad rental concepts people have thrown out, or middle school, and trying to really have it all laid out, because I think you and I are in the same place. And I've only been here 4 years. There are people who have been here a lot longer than that have just continually battled with this question. And I really hope we can get it off of the agenda for Newmarket for a long time, whether it's a tuition agreement or a new school, whatever the right choice is. I'd like to put it to rest. Let me get to some new people. Go ahead. Yes.
Just a point I'd like to have clarified. What percentage vote does it take to pass the bond issue for a new school?
My understanding for a bond issue?
Well, for money to build a new school. That would probably be a bond, right?
Yes.
So
I think it's 2/3, yet I thought I saw something the other day I saw something the other day that said in SB 2 towns, and that's what we are, it's 60%. So
right. I thought we voted down the option to make it do. That's just something I wanted to clarify.
I've got
a lot
to
of
do
people
some
say you
homework.
need 2/3 to pass that. You don't. You need 60%.
It's still a supermajority.
Yeah, but it's still not 2/3. It's simply less.
Thank you. Yes. Did you have your hand up, didn't you? I thought.
Getting on a little bit with what he said, that and what you said, my big problem is you want us to make a decision now. Okay, you want us to maybe go to Oyster River. Okay, you're telling us what the junior, senior high school would cost. You're telling us what it will cost for our kids to go to Oyster River for the high school. But nowhere in that picture is, okay, if our kids go to Oyster River, what are we doing with our middle school kids? Are we going to be able to revamp the school and make it work? Or how much money do we have to spend for a junior high, whether it be 6 through 8 or 5 through 8? We don't have the whole picture. And I do not believe anyone can make a good judgment decision without having every single option laid out for us with all of the costs involved.
Couldn't agree more. That's my aim. That is my aim. Before you take that first vote, so that you know what your options are. I totally agree.
Yeah, but I mean, we can't get that 2 weeks before voting time.
I understand that too.
We need it ASAP. We should have had some of that before all of these meetings even started.
Well, I have provided a lot more. I didn't give you half of what I had before.
But see, that's the thing. You have it, but we don't have it.
I've made it all public. It's on the website.
Everything that you know, so that we can make a decision.
It's on our website. I've made every effort to share whatever I know. Believe me. But you and I are in agreement. You know, it's whatever it's going to fail if you don't have an understanding of all the options. You have to understand them all.
My daughter-in-law went to Oyster River, and she just laughed about Newmarket going there. My granddaughter goes there now, and if you think there's clicks here, wait till the kids get over into Oyster River. The clicks are unbelievable now.
Yeah. That's disappointing, but that happens in a lot of big schools. It happens in a lot of big schools. Okay, now I got to get some new faces. Yes?
So we tuition out, or whatever. In 15 years, don't we still have the same problem to deal with if there's no agreement that goes ahead? I mean, there's a lot of things that have to happen to make this conversation not come up again for a very, very long time.
You know, I think you have to put your optimist hat on that it will work. You know, and I agree. Kids will make the adjustment pretty fast. I think they will. I think parents will have a hard time with it, but in time, I think everybody will work to make it work, but that's going to take some time.
It sounds like a simulation-wise. I mean, if our kids aren't going to be included in the rankings, if the kneecap scores are going to have to be separate, if all these things are going to be separate, then it doesn't sound like it's going to be a very cohesive
I can't conceive of a way that our kids wouldn't be fully integrated, so I don't know about that. Okay, but you know, your dilemma is that you're renting and you don't know the future, and I totally get that. But so I can't speak to that. There's risk in that, and it's a matter of what level of confidence do you have that it will work for years and years and years and years and years, as it has in other districts.
Jim?
Yes, go ahead.
About meeting somewhere about the end of August, the end of September. The question was asked by a board member in terms of the ranking. And Dr. Morse said right there will be no subset. It will be all one, period. There'll be no dividing and ranking. He came out and said that publicly.
Good. I hope that's the case.
That's what he said.
Yeah. Somebody else just had their hand up, yes, yeah. Yes, you?
I guess I'm kind of at the point, I've got a junior now, and, you know, I've been hearing the discussions forever and ever and ever, and I'm kind of at the point where I'm willing to support both A or both B. Whichever way comes, I'm going to support it either way and I'm more worried about Plan C. I'm more worried that, kind of like this gentleman said, what's going to happen if A doesn't work and B doesn't work, and we don't have any option for C. You have no kind of framework going where...
I don't know what C is for you.
I'm saying if we lose the tuition agreement and we don't pass a new school, there's been no...
Oh, yeah, we have, well, I mean, as a community, we have looked at other options. Now, I'm going to continue working with the architect to look at those and lay those out for you. But the problem is that we've already looked at that. And as a facilities committee, discounted certain options that you might be wanting to reconsider. So that's the reality of it. You know, can we still revisit things? Sure. But I really, I hope not. I hope not. Yes.
I want to thank you, first of all, for what you said about the kids. And I've watched all your shows, and I know they all want to stay. But I just want to tell you that I've had experience with that when I was young, which was a long time ago. But I was a base kid brought into Portsmouth, and I had to go to Portsmouth High School, and I had 4 years of hell being the outsider. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but like you said, there's a lot of clickiness that goes along with high schools. And I don't think that it's going to be easy for our kids. And they love this school so much. And I just want to tell you, working there has been such a pleasure because they're all respectful, good, smart kids. And the education they get, we meet every standard here.
That would make it.
Mr. Otash, who just
it would be
left,
hard
he
for...
was a student here, and now he's a teacher.
Yes.
You said wonderful things, though, and it's all true.
Thank you, it is, yeah. Well, it would be hard for anybody to go through that level of a transition. There's no question. But as you know, I'm sure all of us have faced adversity of one form or another in our lives, and you face it and you try to make the best of it, and in time, you know, you work your way through it. And that's how I think that would play out too. Back here. Okay.
One thing, I did talk to our Durham resident, and our population will pretty much be equal with their population. And I think that hopefully will help with the transition. It's not like 20 kids going into 200. I believe that their population is around 100 per class, and that ours would be similar, so hopefully that will help. In your experience, Dr. Hayes, have you ever seen a school that within a couple of years of taking on other schools into their system that they did not fully incorporate testing and rankings, that they kept them separate? Have you ever seen that in a tuition agreement where beyond the tuition year that occurred?
Agreements haven't happened for a long time, and we don't have any good examples that mirrors where we're headed. But I can't, you know, in the end, I mean, do I think that's really going to happen? No. I mean, it's just the thinking behind it that troubled me. But I would like to think that people will realize, hey, we're all Oyster River students at that point. So, up and back, yes.
Just quite a few maybe random thoughts, but I've lived in this town for almost 30 years. And, you know, they've kicked this idea back and forth. And, you know, you talk about what's a tuition rate or tuition going to cost on the tax rate. I ask, what's a new building of 50 or plus million going to cost us on the tax rate, in addition to the fact that there is no state building aid, and there probably won't be for at least another 3 or 4 years. I guess more passionately, I'd like to also speak about the fact that I am a retired educator. And I taught for 35 years at one of the cooperative high schools that you mentioned here this evening. And I'd like to applaud the young man and lady who spoke about the opportunities that can be afforded students in a much broader sense at a little bit larger high school. Okay, and you talk about the concerns of students coming from a small school and going to a larger one, the adjustments, the cliques, the horror show of being a base student at Portsmouth High School. Well, I mention that because I taught at Portsmouth High School for 35 years. And we, over the last 8 to 10, prided ourselves in the individualized, personalized education that we gave those students. And the fact that no student went to Portsmouth High School without being known by that 4 or 5 or 6 teachers that could, upon graduation, be able to sit down and write letters of recommendation or whatever else. Every student is very well known to a number of staff members, and we prided ourselves on that. So I feel that given the proper transition into Oyster River High School, it should be a smooth transition. And I think that if we kick this one down the road, we have missed an opportunity of a lifetime.
I know. If it were a tuition agreement, we would do everything possible to make it a smooth transition for kids, and that doesn't start the first day of school. That starts at least a year in advance. Yes.
Thought to, and this is just a personal opinion again, to the socioeconomic disparity there seems to be between Durham and Newmarket. Our kids are going to go in as underdogs. I'm very concerned about that. I do have a daughter who's in 8th grade now. She has all the things that have gone on here. We've talked about, you know, her year this year has been phenomenal because of a new administrator. And making that connection with him has basically turned her year around. But I'm very concerned that she's going to go into a bigger thing where it's a more money town. It's well known. Newmarket definitely has a lot less money than Durham. I'm very concerned about the impact that's going to have on our students. And I'm wondering if there's been any kind of conversation.
Any discussion around that? No one ever brought that concern?
A couple parents have brought it to me. That's why I was kind of asking.
Not in any of our discussions. I mean, our concern is, you know, our focus, and we had, I think, some terrific meetings about really the focus is on doing well for all of the kids, doing the best we can for all of the kids, and that's what it was about, and it was the program we provide them. And you could tell there's a real commitment on both sides, that both sides really want to make this work. This isn't just send us your tuition money and thank you very much, you know, so, yeah. You want to say something?
Yeah. On the junior high, do you have any projections or any thought process of saying that, okay, let's say the kids go to Oyster River, I'm going to bring forward on the 2015 to the voters for a possible building of a new junior high school. Has that process been brought out in terms of talks or whatever?
Let me repeat his question, that if there's a tuition agreement to begin in 2015, that what I referred to a little while ago as the second step. So you vote that in March, then there's a special meeting. Would the special meeting be dealing with a middle school construction project?
Right. It'd be too late.
You know, what would be too late about it?
Well, you'll be in 15, and 15, 16 is your fire code.
You'd have to do the fire and life safety.
Regardless.
Yeah. Yeah, we're getting close to that point anyway, of having to do
So
it.
the junior high could be pushed back 3-4 years, if that's possible?
Yeah, and you know, we've not really discussed that. The board has asked me to work with the architects and engineers to design a middle school only that would be a 5 through 8 school. And we had a meeting today on it, and I think probably within a week or two I'll get a first look at the full design, and we'll go from there. But if, you know, my recommendation would not be to do that right away. You got to fix the fire and life safety. My worry, if I'm in Newmarket, my worry is I'm renting. Do I really want to build a middle school, or do I want to wait until I find out how this rental deal goes? You know, they may want to put it off, but we both know the problems with putting it off are construction costs go faster than your ability to pay, and the hope of state aid is, to me, it's a long way away. I don't think it's even a few years away. It really is.
So you're saying that the fire and safety should be done a week from this coming June of next year? Has to be done.
I think so. In fact, my intention is if in November we're offered this tuition agreement, then I want to talk to the board right away about starting right away, because it's going to take. with the fire and life safety, just so you know, we know what the code issues are. What we haven't done is done the engineering design work. Trying to save as much money out of that pool of money as we can. But we're getting close to that point where we've got to take advantage of next summer, and so it's going to take time. I think if we know around December that we're going to be doing some fire and life safety next summer, and that gives the engineers time to design, all right, what are we dealing with next? And then going out to bid, getting contractors like we did with the science egress thing.
So the taxpayers could have a view of saying maybe down the road in 3-4 years for the junior high, if all goes well.
That's my thinking. We never really discussed it as a board. Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead. You haven't spoken. It's all right. I'm trying to get new faces.
Okay. I request, Dr. Hayes, that when you put together the various cost estimates, please include, to the extent possible, costs associated with joining the Oyster River Cooperative. I know there's a process laid out for that, and it's very specific, but I think it's important for people to realize that it's more than just a vote. Yep. There's a cost associated with joining cooperative as well.
Right, and I assigned that to my business administrator. I actually had a morning meeting on that this morning, and I think she's about this close to having it all laid out.
Great, thank
she
you.
roughly said, Jim, it's going to cost this much. And I won't say it because it's not ready for prime time, but it is costly.
Do you mean just as a tuition agreement, or do you mean as a full member?
As a full member. You need to buy in.
Right, you need to buy in.
They own things.
Right.
We need to buy in.
Well, and then their tax rates are significantly higher than ours. People don't like ours, you should see theirs.
Theirs is the $5 higher that the new building would cost.
Right, and about the cooperative thing, when you have the opportunity, they say, okay, you can join the cooperative. That means that the elementary school comes underneath the jurisdiction, and the junior high school comes underneath the jurisdiction of the cooperative school district, which means that Newmarket pretty much loses control until they allow people on the school board to help make decisions for our town.
There is an RSA, a state law, that defines the process for joining into a cooperative. And the first step is for the interested party to contact the cooperative and express that, and then they're duty-bound by law to study it. And so they form a study committee. That study committee is the group that will lay out all of the elements, including, like what you're saying, is it K-12 or is it not K-12? I mean, from my vantage point, I can't conceive how they can be K-12 and we could be a 9-12 partner, which makes me think we have to be all in at K-12 too. But it's that study committee which would take time. You don't think you're going to make a decision in year 5 and then no, it might take a year or more to figure it all out. But there's no clear expectation in the laws around what you say. It's really up to this study committee to craft whatever kind of cooperative they want, if they think it can work.
Yeah, it's time to do something now. It's, we voted for the golf course, plan years ago, and we would have loved a brand new school in Newmarket. We just thought that was a great idea, but a lot of people didn't have the money in town, and it's just time. I mean, my son gets on a trailer every day, in the elementary school, and my daughter does color guard at Portsmouth High School. It's time to do something, for the kids. I mean, it's just that, it's just that simple. And I think if we don't, we're just going to keep going round and round in circles. So.
I'm glad you say that. I think I hear that from a lot of people. I think there's a, maybe different from 2006 and 2008, I don't know, but there really seems to be a readiness within a lot of people in the community to say, we need to make our decision in the year ahead. We need to figure out what we're doing and do it. The question is, what is it? And so there's no question it's going to cost you money. So the question is going to then be, what do you get for your money? And so that's why you need a lot more facts than you have right now. Yes?
I have 2 questions, and they're not related at all. I read in the paper that there's a town that's going to Dover, and they just redid their contract, and it was like 11,500 or 12,000 or 12,500 for their kids to go to Dover. Why would our students be so much higher to go to Oyster River? You're talking a couple thousand per student more.
That's the number that's in the current framework that the Oyster River Board offered. That's the answer to that, but they've also opened the door to further negotiations, including any aspect, including money.
Okay.
So I agree with you. There's that. I know all I know is what I read in the paper, and that's sometimes dangerous. But
My second question has to do with the SPED students. You're saying that the kids that would go there versus out of district, those decisions will be made by Oyster River.
yes.
Is it possible that kids, SPED students that we teach in district, in our schools, that Oyster River would say, we don't want them here, you have to send them out of district, which would then add cost to the town of Newmarket?
That's a valid fear. I can tell you when the two SPED coordinators got together and compared the notes that I talked about in terms of our kids going there, there seemed to be comparable programs at that school, as well as comparable thinking around inclusion, which is what you're talking about. Because we have a very high threshold, I guess I can say, of including kids. It's really a high priority for us in this district, and not every district is that way. It seemed to be the same there, and I think the only way to answer that one is to go there and find out. It's really hard to nail that down, but there is some element of risk there. We do a terrific job including kids in our schools. I will say that. Yes, go ahead.
When he mentioned the tax rate was $5 higher than Newmarket, the reason why Durham's tax rate is so high is because every time the university buys land away from the town, the people's taxes go up. So the more UNH buys, the higher their taxes will become. And that would be a fee that we should be concerned about, because if their rates go up, then that means our rates go up too.
If we're in a cooperative, maybe.
Right.
Yeah. Right.
So that's something people have to consider is if UNH grows, Durham's tax rates go up, education goes up. And that's where the tuition fee lies. This is, I taught up in Plymouth, and Plymouth State buying up all the land, developing the college. This is what happened up here. And they're in a cooperative school district also.
Yes.
Two things. I've worked in the Oyster River schools, and they do, their inclusion rate for special ed students is high.
Good. That was our impression.
Something that
yes.
they value.
Yep. Good.
And that's personal experience. The other thing is, earlier this evening, someone came up with a concern about curriculum, and I think it should be emphasized that we are moving towards Common Core standards, and so there's going to be articulation, not just at the high school, but from kindergarten on up in terms of curriculum that would be a Common Core, whether you're in Durham or Dover or.
Right. And I think that's a really good thing.
And I think that's something to emphasize, because I think it would be a concern for parents if there's a big discrepancy between curriculum.
Well, we have had the New Hampshire state frameworks for a while, so every school is supposed to be, pursuing those. But I think the newness of the Common Core has kind of re-energized the common look at curriculum and the common standards.
Added rigor and
so I'm very happy with
added substandards that are
right.
more supportive and that
right.
that will enhance learning.
Right. I agree. Thank you. Where am I here? Is that right?
Can you just clarify that? So if Oyster River does not choose us, it's off the board for...
Right.
And then what happens from there?
Well, the board's going to have to determine what it puts on the warrant article. But I can tell you where I am. What my recommendation would be is to put a proposal on there to build a new school. I truly believe it. I think we've studied this thing every which way, and I think it's the smartest, and I know it's expensive, but in the long run, it's an investment. It's an investment for this community in many ways. I'm going to do, and I know it'll never pass. I hear you, but no, I'm going to look at other options. I'm going to look at trying to reduce the cost of that. I had a conversation today with the architect about trying to reduce the cost of that school, trying to find ways to bring it down. But to me, that's, if there's no possibility of a tuition agreement, if that goes away, then you've got to do something about that school. You've just got to. Can't, and I would hate to think that Newmarket will, go down the path that it's followed for the last 20 or 30 years, and that is doing a short-term fix that really doesn't make for adequate instructional facility. But we're a ways away from that, and there's a lot more data that people need to chew on, and the board may look at that and say, that's, maybe we ought to think about doing this. I don't speak for them. I speak a lot, but I don't speak for them. Yes, sir.
No, I just wanted the clarification. Now, that school that you're referring to there is a school for not just the under 300 high school students. That's a junior, senior high school.
Yes, it is. Approaching 600 kids.
And probably you included fifth grade in that as well, because other.
I don't think so.
Well, either that or you add on to the elementary school. I mean, it just seemed that if you didn't do that, you'd probably have some other construction costs in the elementary school. So I don't know. It just doesn't seem that it doesn't seem to me that that's a terribly small school. It's not for 300 students. It's for
It's for approximately 600 students, right?
I just.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. I mean, we're seeing larger enrollments, and I truly believe, and I think this relates to tuition agreement as well as building a new school. I've seen it too many times over my years in education. Build it and they will come. If you have a deplorable facility that persuades people to go elsewhere, and as soon as you have, and it becomes their perception of what education quality is in that school, right or wrong, and that happens here in this district. And if you build a new school, I have seen schools that they have a target enrollment, and in a matter of years, they've exceeded that target enrollment. And I do believe that a tuition agreement may very well have the same effect, that we may see more kids opting to go to Oyster River as opposed to some private placement. And that translates into unanticipated enrollments that are unanticipated tuitions. And that's why what I've said to the board is that if we go down that road, we need to set up a trust fund, a capital trust fund that will put money in it as that buffer against those unanticipated enrollments. It's really not unlike unanticipated special ed costs. So you need something to rough out the edges there. Yes?
$76 million surplus for the state right now. And I don't think I'd sit quietly and let them spend it on something else when we have a problem here. So I would say call your reps, I'm one of them. Call Senator Martha Fuller Clark. I know she's been to a meeting. And call the governor's office.
Yeah, because that's the only the help from the state. Just to explain state aid where that stands, so you understand it. There was a moratorium up until last July. There was a chance in the legislature that the moratorium was going to be lifted, and then it went away. And so they extended the moratorium for 2 more years to July of 2015. Any construction project that gets initiated before July of 2015, the community is on their own. There is no ability nor interest, it seems, at the state level to provide some retroactive reimbursement. What was apparent back when the legislature was looking at funding this, they were willing to put, I think it was $50 million into a pool to deal with school projects. But they already have a number of projects that are still drawing state aid. To the point where I think it was around, you can correct me, Michael, but I think it was around 46 million in ongoing projects, leaving only about 4 to 5 million that could be dedicated for a new project. And that as those old projects drop off the rolls, that will free up money. In other words, I think the intention was to hold that cap at 50 million and let attrition build up the amount for new projects. So you can see that's a slow process. Without me going through the whole thing, if you take the current state law, and if we had a $50 million school, the state would have to give us $12 million up front and then $3 million at the end. And that's if we get a 30% reimbursement. And so when you think they've got 4 to 5 million for the whole state, when do you think that'll grow big enough that Newmarket could get 12 million? I just don't see it happening, and it's really depressing. But I know there's that revenue, and but I hear things that a lot of people have eyes on trying to spend it, but I don't think anybody's going to end up spending it in the end. But who knows?
We are facing a drastic situation here, a deadline with the fire safety, and if either town says no to the tuition, well, then we have to have a backup.
Right.
Right. And the junior high school will take money.
Well, I certainly hope to make my voice heard with at the state level on that, and see if there's any opportunity for state aid. And the only way you can get that under the law, in an emergency, the state can waive the moratorium for your town or district, right? That's basically how the law works. Yes?
The tuition agreement does not pass, would it take another year to get another warrant article? Would we have to wait until March the following year?
I would hope we have a special meeting in the spring, because I think the longer you wait, the more costs and interest rates go up. So to me, I'd like to be prepared, whatever that step 2 is. I mean, we don't have to put the warrant together. We just have to have a special meeting in our future, and then depending upon the outcome, take action.
Isn't there also the possibility if we didn't pass the tuition agreement and we didn't pass a bond to build a new school, that we could be facing, sorry, you just have to get out of this building. It's no longer safe to have students in here. Isn't that still?
I think we will fix, one way or another, we'd fix the fire and life safety. We'd have to.
Would we be mandated to? I mean, if the town simply won't take action, does someone step in at that point, the state or someone, and say, sorry, you have to do this?
We've been put on notice that by September 2015, we have to be fully code compliant, or else they have threatened to shut the doors. So one way or another, the only way out of that is if, in the letter it says if we're under construction for a new school. Now one can easily say, or you got a tuition agreement and you're going to do this, whatever it is. But we got to have some concrete plan, and we do need to come into full compliance.
I just think that needs to be kept front and center in these discussions, that we really need to make a decision, because there just aren't the options. We've taken those off the table to delay this.
Right.
And I hope that will continue to be brought up so that people are aware that they, not 5 or 6 years ago when they could just kick it down the road again. No. They don't have that option anymore.
I do expect in the next month or so to be talking with the board about beginning engineering work to design some segment of the fire and life safety for this summer. We really got 2 summers left. And the thing is, a lot of the construction, we managed to avoid it even this last summer, but I think it's fair to say that some of the construction might impact school year. I don't know how you avoid it.
Ceiling tiles falling on students' we gotta do something.
Yeah, I know we do. We really do.
You know,
No, we're not doing that. That's not good enough. Got to do better. All right, I think we're about done, and I'm about 5 minutes before I intended to close anyway, so this is great. Thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you very much.
Yes, you have a question?